let's understand a bit more about objects. Yeah, so I've told you what it is. So first thing about object is the syntax, how to create an object. So in JavaScript, there are different methods to create objects. Maybe in other languages, we have only one way or maybe two ways. Here also like few ways. So let's understand what is a common method and how do we do it. So in the previous class, mostly we have understood what is an object, why object. It is one of the data type in JavaScript. Yeah. So mainly we classify data types into primitive and non-primitive. Non-primitive specifically we say object as a reference type. We will understand later today like okay what exactly is reference type means. Okay, to start with how to create an object. So creating an object we have got, let me I think
So your
share my
screen
screen
not
also.
visible.
Yeah, I think so. Let me also tell you some of the syntaxes to create an object. So creating an object, we have options to create using literal syntax. So what exactly is literal syntax? So instead of using a method, using constructors like in most of the languages, we create an object directly by putting two curly brackets. Directly putting two curly bracket and assigning this into an object. This syntax is actually called as literal syntax. Okay, now I got an error because I'm trying to create a new object. Now what is a program which I'm right now in? I'm actually using a node REPL. Okay, node REPL. So let me tell you how I enter into this node REPL. Okay, so just a second. I think I'll also, yeah. So I'm using a node REPL. So this is where I can actually show you examples. So the first syntax is about creating an object using literal syntax. So literal syntax, the syntax is putting two curly brackets. This is an example for creating an object using literal syntax. I have to enter into a node REPL mode. For that, I'll have to say node, and I've installed node also. Okay, so now let's create the same object. obj1 is equals to this empty bracket. Yeah, this is a syntax, a very simple syntax. And this syntax is called literal syntax. This is one example. Let me show you one more example. Let's say person is equal to this object. So there's no point in creating an empty object. So we can also add some properties to this object. It could be name, yeah, name, yeah. So let's say Kumar, and then age, so and so, okay, uh, gender. So likewise, we can actually add a lot of properties to this. So all these things, the key value pair, key, and this is a value, key and value, key and value. So likewise, we can literally write in the object as whatever we want. Meaning we are, so instead of using a function or instead of using a class, we are directly able to create an object with all the properties that we want. So both are examples for creating an object using literal syntax. And there are other syntax. One more is actually to use a constructor. Yeah. So we have an example like this. I'll not talk too much on that for now. So we can also use a constructor method like this. And there is no difference between, you know, using a constructor method and a normal object creation using literal syntax. So this is called constructor. Why? I've used a new keyword and here I've written a constructor function. This can be a constructor function or it can be a class in JavaScript. But both are the different ways to create an object. Now if you ask me what is the most preferred one, the literal syntax. Yeah, or most commonly used, not the preferred, I would say most commonly used syntax is to use a literal notation, right? So we know why we create objects. Yeah, basically object is like a kind of a big storage. Rather than just holding one value, we can store multiple values under one variable. All these properties are stored in a memory in a different location. And this memory location, yeah, will have an address. That address is what is there in the person variable. And with respect to syntax, let me clarify. You can use let, const, yeah, even where is also allowed. Yeah, it is not not that always you have to use what is called as const. Yeah, so I can create let student also. Okay, class. I can use a key and then maybe ID. It could be one. Yeah, I can use even let also. So as such, there is no restriction, but the same rule applies. So using const is better always than let and where. Where you have to totally avoid. Now, once we are familiar with the syntax of creating objects in JavaScript, it is also important. Okay, what do we use this object for? Mainly, we have properties. So we should know how to extend an object with new properties, how to access an existing property. So these keys are actually called as properties. Name, age, gender, or here it is class, ID. These are all called as properties of an object. And this variable holds the reference of that object, and each object have a set of a set of keys and a values. Now how do I access a particular key? So student
by using dot notation.
dot
Or
notation. So dot and then the property name is a general syntax. Object name dot property name. See, now I'm able to get the value. Can I update it to something else? Yeah, yes, you can update it. Now let me check what is there in student. See, I'm able to get student class B ID 1. So both using the same syntax, using the dot notation, I can read the value of the particular property. It is also possible to update a value there itself directly. Yeah. So what else? I can also delete a property. Yeah. For example, a person object has a property called age or gender. I don't want to have an age. So let me delete it off. So for that we have an operator called delete operator. So there is no symbol for it. You have to write the keyword delete followed by that then person dot the key name. Whatever you would like to delete, you can use that key. So the delete is successful. So let's check by accessing the full object. You can now see that the object has been updated by deleting that particular key. Yeah, clear? Clear with so far? Yeah. So this is to access the property, update a property, and also delete a property. Now what else we have? We can also add a property to an existing object. Let's say now person has only name and gender. What if I want to put some mobile number? Or what if I want to put some contact number of that person? Which is totally a new property which I want to add. Not like modifying and reading. I can also add new properties. Yeah. So totally a new property to that. Let's say this is my contact. So I can add a new property as well. See, now the new property got added. Yeah. So we will get familiar with this syntax as we move on, and you should also know this basic syntax like how to deal with objects. And dealing with our JavaScript object is very simple compared to other languages. All right. So with this, let's also understand there is an one more way to access these properties, yeah, or list all the properties in a given object. For that, there is one standard for loop which is also called as for in loop. Meaning, so I can use a key which is in the object called person. Okay, in the object called person, I would like to display each and every key. I don't want to display one by one, correct? Irrespective of how many our keys are there within an object. So let me try to display all the properties in an object. So how do I do? So I use a console log, and in the console log, first I would like to extract key. Followed by that, I would like to display its value. How? Object name instead of dot notation. So when I'm using for loop, I cannot use dot notation. I cannot write person dot key. Why? Key is actually a variable which holds the value of the key, right? Person dot name works, but now if I'm trying to access using a variable, then I have to use what is called as array notation. Yeah. So more on that in few minutes. So see, I can access person of the square bracket key. And now let me close the for loop. See now? So I got name, gender, and then also contact. So, so using the for in loop, since I've written in operator here, this is why it is called for in loop. So we can use to display. This is to list all the properties in an object. Yeah, now I mentioned about the other thing which is called as bracket notation. Few minutes ago I told you there is a dot notation which can be used to access a given property in an object. But now we also understood there is a possibility to use using bracket notation. So let me show you a syntax using bracket notation, or also called as array notation. So person of name. So this won't output anything. You know, the reason being I don't have name defined. So this syntax is expecting name to be available as a variable. I don't have any variable with with this name, but I have a key with that name. So in that case, the syntax is, if I'm referring a key, then the syntax is to use single quote or a double quote. Either, okay? So you have to basically express the key in a string. Yeah? So if you're actually mentioning the actual key, then you have to use quotes. Be it, be it, yeah, whatever is the key, yeah. So you should actually, be it single or double quote, you have to put it in the key. I mean, you have to put it in the quotes if you're using array notation, yeah, to access a particular key. But let's say this key itself is in a variable. Assume I'm using a variable called, let's say field. That field I would like to now access, like, okay, let's say gender. Now field is having gender. I would like to access gender from person. So now I can use this variable called field. So this time now I'll be able to get the gender value. You see the difference? Yeah. Now same thing using the actual key name, gender. Both are same. But then here I've used a variable, here I've used a actual key value. But then where is this particular syntax helps? Yes, this syntax helps in many different cases. One is, for example, if I am trying to display or fetch all the properties dynamically like this. Dynamically, I would like to display all the keys in an object, then this particular thing is going to help me. And the second thing it is going to help me is, it is also possible to add multi-word keys into an object. Okay, yeah, I'm getting what I'm saying. This is also possible to add a multi-word key, but that multi-word key I cannot write using dot notation. That's why you see you got an error. So here also I have to use what is called as the bracket notation. See now if I check what is there in the person, you could see this multi-word key is there. Now if at all I have to access even or update this key, I always have to use the same, okay, multi-word or meaning the bracket notation. I cannot use dot notation for this kind of use case. Clear? So, I mean these are all the basic concepts of object or dealing with an object in JavaScript. There is one last thing I have to mention before we say, we now know or at least familiar with the syntax of object. So let's say I would like to access a property. Yeah. Assume that property name is, yeah, something like number. Yeah, some property which is not there. I'm trying to fetch it. See what are you going to get it? You didn't get an error, but you got what is called as undefined. So the property itself does not exist, but I'm trying to access it. And we are familiar with undefined because in so many places we see this value is undefined. Maybe just to tell you function parameters, if I'm not passing a value, it is undefined. I've declared a variable, not initialized, undefined. So likewise, many places where we end up seeing undefined only. Alright. So if you access a property which is not there, it is not an error. But let's say if the object itself is not there, okay. So object itself is not there. I'm trying to access some value, then it's an error. JavaScript throws this as an error. Your program will not continue after this line. It will halt. Yeah, both object also, you know, object also not there, and you cannot even access a property. That time it's an error. But if you have an object, but then still the property doesn't exist, that's okay. It's a undefined. It won't cause your program to stop. All right. So yeah, so this is about the basics of object, basics of JavaScript object, and that too using the array literal syntax. Sorry, not object literal syntax. Yeah, array also has a literal syntax. I think we'll be seeing it about it soon. But then we call it literal because we are directly, adding the properties, fetching the properties without using, normally like we use classes, functions to even create or initialize or update. Yeah. So we are not doing it. All right. So, but just also remember there are other ways to create an object. Yeah. So one which I have told is like, object.create. Yeah. There's a syntax called object.create. So here we would like to create a new object, but by a copy of it. For example, now I would like to create person. So I have to take a reference object from which I would like to create a new object. Yeah. So this is also another example. Earlier I told you I can also use a constructor method to create an object. More on these two things later, but for now, just to remember, yes, there are different ways. All right, so I don't think so clear will work because this is a node REPL. Yeah? As I'm just saying you, so this is a node REPL I'm using, which means I can execute JavaScript even in the terminal. It need not have to be in the browser. Earlier I used to show in the browser console. So since you are now getting used to JavaScript, so if at all you have installed Node.js in your system, you will be able to run directly within your command prompt itself. And all you have to do is you have to just say node and you will enter into the node REPL. All right, so with that understanding of objects, so today let us understand a bit more into objects. And I told you in JavaScript, everything is called an object. Almost everything is an object. Yeah. So that's why understanding objects and the concepts around object is very, very important. And this is where like I think now you get into the actual JavaScript. Yeah. The objects. and primitive methods. That is where you will learn, totally a different set of things are the JavaScript starts now. Okay, so we know how to create an object, but how objects are different from primitives? How objects are different from primitives? Okay, let's create one primitive. Okay, so let's say test or a text. It could be, yeah, I am JavaScript. Yeah, how this is different from an object which we created. So let's say const, yeah, uh, what is it? So yeah, we can take like again a same object, person, student. Let's say EMP. Yeah, or let's put the same thing in a text, same value. I'm going to store a same value. Why to have something different? Yeah, so one is a primitive, another is a constant. But then what is the difference? Though they are storing the same thing. So one of the main difference with respect to objects and primitive, and this you might be familiar in other language also. So here both are variables. Text is also a variable, EMP is also variable. The difference comes here, we are storing a simple value. Here we can have one or more values, correct? We can have one or more values in case of an object, whereas in case of a primitive, in case of primitives, we will be able to hold only single value, whereas in case of object, it is possible to extend that object, correct? I can put some more things, but there is one other important difference. The difference is, yeah, more than storing a value, in case of an object, this variable will not hold the actual value. It doesn't hold all this. Whereas the simple variable like text will hold the value. For us, it is looking like that. Both are holding the value only. But internally, behind the scene, this EMP holds just the address of this object, not the value. I'll show you how. Okay. So what I'm saying, an object variable holds the object reference, or it is also called as address in the memory location. So in memory somewhere this is dumped, this is stored in the heap, and now EMP just holds the address to it. And you can keep modifying it. It is just going to point to that address, and in address whatever is there you can access it using this variable name. Now how do you say this is holding an address and primitive is actually holding a value? Yeah, so let's see. So before seeing the example, let me also say this. Objects are also called as, copied by reference, copying address. You might have heard this terminologies like pass by reference, pass by value. So primitives are pass by value, objects are pass by reference. Okay, let us see that in examples now. Okay, let me create another variable called, okay, a text2. And for text2, let me assign what is called as, let's assign whatever we have in text. And let's modify what is there in text2 also. Okay, so I'll just update, okay, saying this is text2. So can you tell me what will be there in text now? So you check, text still holds I am JavaScript. Earlier when I assigned, text2 was holding I am JavaScript. So this proves that, so though I updated text2 with a different text is still holding I am JavaScript. So the assignment, whatever I did here, it actually copied the value, and after updating it, it did not even reflect the original source. Getting what I'm saying? Yeah. So we didn't update, the original value. Okay. Let me, I think I would have shown you.
Yes, sir.
It didn't update it, its, original value, source value is, not at all modified. Only the update has come, and now text 2 is not same as, you check, they're false. Earlier they were true. Okay. This is in terms of primitive. Let's see in case of an object what is going to happen. Okay. So now I would like to access that EMP. EMP is having, so and so. I would like to create an object, empty object called this, which is even not required. I can actually put directly EMP into it. I can directly put EMP into that OBJ. Fine. Now what has happened? We don't know it. So can I access EMP? Yeah, EMP you could see. Same object I can see. So both having these properties. But still this will not answer my question, correct? Whether it is copied by reference or not. So let us use a newly created one, and then there is an ID. Let me put, yeah, a big value 999. Let's say simply 999 instead of string. Now tell me what will be there in the text now. So not in the text. Okay, text is a primitive, not modified. Let's see what is there in the EMP. I modified this ID using OBJ, but I am checking now what is there in EMP. That is also modified. Now how is this possible? It is possible because EMP and OBJ are pointing to a same object, which is called as this object in the memory. They are holding just the address of it. So as simple as, so they give an explanation saying you have one locker, but you got two keys. So using both the keys I can access the locker, correct? Because it belongs to the same object. That's how it is. And that is why we say objects are actually copied by reference. If it would have actually copied a value here in this assignment, then updates to OBJ should not have reflected in EMP. Updates to OBJ would have not reflected in EMP if it was copy by value. Since it is by copy by reference, you are seeing that if I modify emp.text, vice versa, yeah, both. Okay, let's say it's JS. I'll simply put JS. Now check what is there in OBJ. OBJ text is also modified. You modified via EMP, but you see the original, since it is the same, so it has been updated. As simple as you have only one account. Assume you got two ATM cards. Yeah. So since it is only one account, you don't have option to, maintain two balances. It will be only one balance, though you are having a multiple option to withdraw. So this is what is called as, the object or a reference type. Objects are also called with another name called reference types. Why? Because they hold the address. Okay, so hope this is clear. Yeah, any questions? Okay, so
No, sir.
now, so with this we understood the fundamental concepts of primitive versus objects. We earlier understood about objects and the syntax and accessing property. Now we understood how they compare with respect to primitive. Now the next thing is again an important topic. So to understand is equality. How do I compare two objects are same or not? For example, I can text is equal to, you know, I had a text2, I think. Yeah, that's a variable. Oh, sorry, I'm not in Node anymore. So earlier I created variable called text and that had a value. And I was comparing two values, yeah, two primitives using equals to. Same way we can compare objects also. I'm creating another object, empty object. So I'm creating basically two empty objects. So guess what is the value? I mean, what will be the return value if I'm comparing EMP with object? Are they equal? Both are two empty objects. Now what I'm doing, I'm just trying to compare them.
False. We'll get false.
Okay. Yeah. So you got the answer, right? So it is false. But now let's understand why it is false and when it will be true. That's an important thing we need to understand.
Because employee and object holding the different addresses. Yeah, different reference.
Okay. So that's the answer. So just few minutes, seconds ago, we understood they both hold the address, not the real object. Yeah. So they hold the, so always when comparing objects, what matters is address, irrespective of the content. Maybe both the objects will have the same property and same value for that property as well. Let's say name, same name is there. Yeah, assign name and then say name is like say a. Yeah, and then even for obj, I'm going to assign name, same value. Now also if we compare, they end up,
We'll get
not
false.
matching. This is what I meant to say. Irrespective of the content, objects are true if and only if they point to the same address. Okay, now let's create an object called emp2. So to that, I'm going to assign emp. So this assignment, we understood it is actually copy by reference, not the value. When we assign an object to another variable, it happens copy by reference, which means the reference is copied, not the value. Now check emp2 is equal to emp. Answer is true. Why? Because emp2 holds the address of emp. Whatever address emp has, it's all in the same address. As simple as like, okay, imagine like, okay, these two are simple primitives. It's just copying this value into this. Now, can I modify emp2 with something else? Yes, I can modify it. Will it update in emp? Yes, it will update in emp as well. But since they are holding, the same reference earlier, they are equal now. Let's say I update emp2 now. So what is there in emp? So I assign totally a new object here. Earlier it was holding the same reference, but now I assign totally a new object. So now they are not equal. Okay, so this is a comparison. So there is another operator called triple equals to also. In that case also it is the same. Whether you use double equals to or triple equals to in JavaScript, objects are equal only if and only if their address is same, meaning they're pointing to a same object in the memory location. Okay, I think we are going to learn after this like few more concepts with respect to object. One is like how do I copy? Now if this is a so and so, if assignment is happening by reference, what if I want to create a two different objects, but I want a copy of it? This is, we call it as cloning. Yeah. Or how do I create an object using multiple sources? For example, I would like to have multiple objects. Okay. So in the same object, I would like to combine one or two objects. How do I do that? These are like few of the concept. Another thing like okay, listing all the properties in an object, we understood. Okay, so next let's understand these two concepts. Like first of all, how do I make a clone of an object? What we are seeing, assignment does not create a clone. Instead, it just creates another, it just holds a reference of this object into other. This is not a clone. Clone is you need identical copy, but they are separate. And then how do I create an object using one or two objects? Let's say I would like to create a new object, but I would like to still have the value whatever is there here. Totally a new object, but copying these values. Okay, so before I explain this, I think I need a short break. Uh, Give me 5 minutes. I'll be right back. Okay. Uh,
Okay, sir.
Okay, sir.
yeah, till then, if you guys have not done your assignments and questions, maybe you can try to solve one of them. Okay, so let's continue on, you know, the copying part. Yeah, or the cloning part, what I was actually talking about. Yeah, so far we understood objects are copy by reference and not primitives. So there are different ways to clone an object. Yeah, so not sharing the reference. That's what I mean by clone. So one of the way, a simple way is to use our already learned for in loop. What is a loop? For in loop. So let's say I have an object called person and I would like to copy each and every property into an object called, let's say, select obj is the object I would like to copy all the things which are there in a person. Yeah. So in that case, I can use a simple for loop and I can iterate through each and every key which is there in a person object. Assume person object looks like this. Person, yeah, name, so and so, yeah. So let's say Arun, and then yeah. So we'll have some more keys. Now, so the way we copy is each of the primitive properties one by one. So obj of key is equal to person of I. So here I am not actually copying an object. I'm just copying a primitive value which is out of this person of key, yeah, using the array notation or the square bracket notation into a completely new object. So this way at the end of the for loop, I'll have a new object which is obj, but which has all the properties which are from person being copied into the obj. That way, these two objects are not, same. They doesn't point to the same. So how do I check? So all I can do is I can just do a comparison. If obj is equals to or even double equals to person, then this will become false. Why? Because they hold a different reference, though they end up having same values. Our obj will have a copy of every property which is there in person after the successful execution of this for loop. So this is one of the method to clone an object. Now what's the second way? Is this the only way? Now we have got second way. That is using one of the built-in method. So we have a built-in method which is called assign method. So the syntax for that is object.assign. So yeah, so here you can see a syntax summary. So we say target and then we say source. Now the target object is, if I have an object which is already created, yeah, like here what I mentioned. So in that case, I can just mention the name of the object to which I would like to copy this newly or an existing object. So then I'll say person. Now this is a syntax to create or to copy all the properties from here to here, and that way we make a clone of person into an object called obj. Okay, so this is another way to do a clone of an object or a copy of an object. Why we are doing this? Because if I directly assign, yeah, as we discussed, if you directly assign object into another variable, then this copy is not, or this assignment is not doing a copy. When it is an object, we are assigning an object, yeah, to a variable, it is not a copy because objects are reference types. By default, it doesn't copy. That's where we now understood the couple of ways in which we can actually create a copy. We can make this copy work without using the assignment operator. Okay, so this is actually concept of cloning an object. Okay, so hope this is clear. So now let's move on. Okay, how do I merge an object? Let's say I have one or more object, or I would like to create a new object wherein by passing different properties into that object. So again, so merging into a single object or creating a new object from multiple object, yeah, is possible again using this method called object.assign. You see, copy the values of all the enumerable own properties from one or more sources into a target object and finally returns the target object. So there are variety of syntax with respect to using this, yeah, in order to merge an object, in order to create an object from multiple sources. So let me tell you what is variant 1. So the variant 1 of this method is, I'll say object dot assign. Assume I don't have I don't already have an object. So then I have to give the target as an empty object or a new object. And then to that I can mention the target object. So here this method is going to return a completely new object. So that will have all the properties from person copied into this new object and it will return that brand new object. So this variable will hold a reference of that particular object. This is variant 1, or this, the syntax has multiple variants. Now the second variant is we already saw, which is assume the target object which I would like to copy. Okay, so new obj2 already exists. In that case, I don't have to have this assignment. I can directly provide this object as a target because you know because I can directly say because that is a target object anyhow. This is a second variation where object already exists. This object need not be empty. It can also have properties. Yeah, some x is equal to 0, y is equal to 2, anything like this. Yeah, it can have any properties. It will copy just simply the properties from here to here. Be it empty, be it having already properties, the copy is going to happen with this assignment. Yeah, this is called variant 2. Now there is a third variant wherein we said we can kind of combine it from multiple sources, right? So let's say I want to have a new object. Yeah, this works in both the combination, whether you have empty or a target object. And here I would like to say person. Also, I would like to add some more properties. Yeah, maybe an inline object. I need not have to have an existing object. I can put an object which I'm just providing here. For example, it could be contact so and so. Yeah, yeah, it could be, yeah, title so and so. Yeah, so let's say I would like to add any of this person, contact, title. So now the target object will have properties of this and properties of this into the new object which I'm going to create, or which I'm just going to store the reference of it. So the brand new object will have all these properties. So this is a third variant. I can actually mention the name object, each of the objects that I would like to combine. Also, it is possible I can do an inline syntax. I can put the object, or additional properties. Now you might be having a question now. Okay, we saw all these three variant. How this method is going to behave if if this person also has a name, person 2 also has a name. What I mean is, so will it create a duplicate property? Answer is absolutely no. So we will not have a duplicate property in an object. So objects will have always unique keys. In that case, then how it will do? In that case, yeah. So the object which is coming in the, later, are the properties which are coming later. Okay, for example, this has contact and these two also have a contact. Then the last one, yeah, which has a contact will be is what we see in the finally merged object. We don't see this, person because it is mentioned first. No, the latest one will be actually merged into the final object if there is a conflict in the property name. All right. Yeah. So this is a concept of merging an object. So at times we might need to merge one or more objects into a single object, or we might have to add set of properties so that we make our object even more bigger or to hold more values. All right. So with this, I also would like to mention you one more thing with respect to objects, maybe an important thing, which is called a in operator. What is this operator? In operator. We have already seen this in case of for in loop, yeah, as you have already seen. So, but then here we can actually use this object. Yeah, let me show you how does it work. Okay, how does it work? I'll just quit it, and then I want to start uh, a new REPL. So node. So let's say I have an object called person, and I would like to check if name exists in this object. Name in person. So this syntax, just like how we previously saw that to access a property we have to use a quote. This syntax will not work because name is not quoted. It is expecting name to be a variable. So we don't have a property in that variable. So instead we actually want to check a particular property name. Then I can check whether name in person. So this will give me a Boolean value. So this basically checks a property exists or not. Yeah. So if property exists, then it is going to give me a true value. Let's say person has a age, let's say 45, and then I will check is age in person. Answer is true. Yeah, this is to check that given object has this property or not. If not, I'm going to get undefined value, as you know. So if I access name which is not there, I'm going to get a value of undefined. Okay, so these are some of the concepts that you need to be aware when working with object. I think I've covered mostly the all the required things to start this programming. I know there are a lot of advanced concepts around objects, as I've been saying. So JavaScript, most of the things are objects. We deal with objects heavily, and that's why it's very important you familiar with all the syntax and the basic concepts. All right, so I think we'll stop here for now. Let's continue more on this in the next class.